So, every time you give me an idea to talk. So just now, these reverends announced today is called Posong Full Moon Day. You do not know what is Posong. Some people may think it is Kosong. These are the names that we use before this English language come into these countries. We had our own names for the months. Bak, Vesak, Posong, Asala, Nikini, Binara, Wap, Il, Unduap, Durutu, Nawang, Mading. You know Mading, isn't it? Yeah. Names of the 12 months. So, we know only one word, Vesak. Now some people want to change this because there must be something in their mind. They say, not nice, we must use another word. It is the name of a month, not belong to any country or any community. So this is the next, after Vesak, the Posong. And the reverends mentioned just now, so less than 2,300 years ago, Buddhism was introduced to Sri Lanka during the Emperor Asoka's time, on a full moon day like today. So that is why it is some sort of a special significance to mostly our single-age Buddhists. So you might have heard this again and again and again, and you know what it is. Therefore, I am thinking to talk something for you to understand. Buddhism and the Dhamma. These two words. What is Buddhism and what is Dhamma? Buddhism is changeable. Buddhism is not permanent. Buddhism appears, decay and disappear. And from time to time, Buddhism takes different forms. Then introduce various activities and rites, rituals, ceremonies, performances, observances as Buddhism. Then they introduce these practices in different countries. Now let us take Sri Lanka. Before they accepted Buddhism, there was no proper religion in that country. Most of them were devil worshippers and tree worshippers. Devil, although we use a bad spirit, actually devil means yakka. Yakka means some sort of powerful supernatural living being, but they are not very good ones. They are known as yakka. And tree. Now when you study this very carefully, you can understand how they maintain this tradition. There are many other Buddhist countries, like Thailand, Burma, even in India. But Buddhist devotees in those countries do not pay much attention towards the Bodhi tree. But Buddhists in Sri Lanka They are very, very particular about Bodhi tree. Of course, there is another reason for that. Because the branch of the original Bodhi tree under which the Buddha gained enlightenment is there. That is another reason. But even then, they like to pay respect, pay homage, and make vows, and do offerings to the Bodhi tree. That tradition still maintained. But in other countries, there was no such tradition. Now let us take Tibet. Before they accepted Buddhism, all of them were spirit worshippers. So what happened? After becoming Buddhist, they have mixed up the Buddhism which was introduced from India and their spirit worship. Let us take Burma. Before they accept Buddhism, they were nut worshippers. Not N-U-T, nut. N-A-T. N-A-T, nut worshippers. But still there are. Just like datos to you people. And they believe some sort of, like devas. Then Thailand. Thailand was not a Buddhist country. They had lot of Hindu culture, Hindu influence. When you visit Thailand, you can see even in the main shrine room, the stories of Ravana and Rama, pure Hindu stories in their temple. The Hindu culture, Hindu influence still remains there in Thailand. So, in every country, they have mixed up their traditional belief according to their way of life. But these things are changeable. All those things that we practice are changeable. Now let us take certain other countries. China, Tibet, Mongolia, Siberia, Vietnam, Cambodia, North Korea. We say, today we cannot find Buddhism in those countries. Yes, Buddhism disappeared. What is Buddhism? The activities, ceremonies, performance, offerings, chanting, today you cannot find, maybe very rare. The Dhamma taught by the Buddha, no one can destroy, never disappear, never decay. The Dhamma never decay. So we pay more attention, we concentrate more on Buddhism, not on the Dhamma. Our differences, discriminations and superiority complex and all those things we maintain on those practices. But in the Dhamma, you cannot find any difference. Now let us take Japanese Buddhist, Chinese Buddhist, Sinhalese Buddhist, Thai Buddhist, Indian Buddhist, European Buddhist, any kind of Buddhist. All are human beings, isn't it? All are human beings. They have different practices, beliefs, traditions, customs, cultures, all sort of things, created by those people, not introduced by the Buddha. they can remain as good Buddhists although they give up or ignore their original identity of their own traditions and cultures and manners and differences. There you cannot find any difference. Take few examples. Now if you want to be an honest man, whether that man is a Chinaman or Ceylon man or Indian man or Sri Lankan man or European man, honesty is honesty. Is there any difference, religious, racial label in honesty? That is Buddhism. Buddha Dhamma, not Buddhism. You want to be kind, not to be cruel. In that kindness, can you see any difference whether this is Christian kindness, Muslim kindness, Hindu kindness, Buddhist kindness, Chinese kindness, Sinhalese kindness? Kindness is kindness. Then you want to lead a very peaceful, harmonious life without discriminating, without hating, without disturbing others. So is there anybody in this world who can say, no, according to our religion you cannot practice this, it is wrong? Is there anyone who can say? So when you collect all these characteristics, virtues, or in simple language, humane qualities, this is called Dhamma. And nobody in this world who can destroy this Dhamma and obstruct, to say you are uncultured, you are devil worshippers, you are idol worshippers, there is nobody to condemn you. So what is happening? We have forgotten the Dhamma, and 99% we pay more attention towards all those activities as our religion. That is why the Buddha says the Dhamma is eternal. There is nobody to change the Dhamma, and Dhamma never disappears. Only thing that we cannot understand, we don't take the trouble to observe, to practice. So our weaknesses are there. Then, let us take another example. A beautiful saying in Hindu philosophy. The basic teachings, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, in Sanskrit. Brahma is the creator God. Jagat is the world or the universe. The world or the universe is nothing but Maya, illusion, no reality. The reality you can find only in Brahma. That means all these living things that which exist, and the matters or elements or energies that exist in this world or in this universe, and all these movements, talking, eating, walking, working, thinking, all these things are the actions of God, and these are the unit. So one life is one unit, and this unit is functioning here through the influence of God. But this unit, that which exists, is the illusion, the creation or the shadow of Brahma. So that means the Brahma is working everywhere, in everything. There is no individual person or thing. For our identification, we give name. Just like giving names to fishes. You know, when you want to go and buy fish, you say you want to buy this fish, ikang, you have different names, ikang bilis, ikang, I don't know what sort of ikang. But those fishes do not know their names. Only you know the name. Because these names are given by you, not by fishes. This is the truth. That is what the Hinduism says. The identity for our recognition we have differentiated for our usage. But in reality there is nothing, only illusions or maya or imagination or concept. But the same thing you can find in Buddhism. That is more deeper. Vijñapti matra or chitta matra. Now this is Dharma. You can understand Buddhism, but difficult to understand Dharma. This whole world is nothing but concept. Concept created by, here the Buddha did not use the word creator or Brahma. Concept created by the man. When we analyze human beings, animals, plants, other elements and anything, he says, in humans and animals, you can find two groups, matters and energies. Then combined together, because they have magnetic power, to exist together for a certain period. When remain as a bundle, we give different names. This is man, this is woman, this is dog, this is cat, this is tiger, this is a snake, this is bird, and this is earth, this is sky. But when we analyze, in the end, no such thing. No man, no woman, no tiger, no earth. Only elements and energies. Again we go on analyzing elements and energies. After disintegrating or dissolution of this bundle, elemental side absorbed into the basic element energies, energies absorb into the energies. After that, no man, no woman. Only concept created by us. So we go on analyzing human beings, devas, brahmas, any kind of living beings in the whole universe. Under this universal law of impermanence. Only our concept. Now let us come to the scientific analysis. You might have heard this. How Albert Einstein's analyze. He says, here we introduce this as the world. Again we take other existing world system all together. We use one word to introduce, that is universe. So when we analyze scientifically all these universes, we can find only these two things, matters and energies. When we separate different elements and energies, in the end, we can see only vibration, if not waves. No world, no universe. Here you can understand what the Buddha has said and what Hindu philosophy says. But all the others says there will be a permanent entity to remain somewhere, contradict to the analytical interpretation and the Buddha's teaching. But the nature of our human mind is such, we want something. That is our craving. To satisfy our craving, we create something permanent. In simple language, we don't want to die. How nice if we can go and remain somewhere without facing death. Then other religions say, yes, there is, don't worry. Go to be with Lord. Finish. How nice. Then at once you see, how nice, wonderful. No death. Forever to be with Lord. Emotional satisfaction. Never analyze, never think deeply whether it is true or not. But entertain your craving. You need that. You don't want to understand whether it is true or not. Oh, if there is a place, as if that it is sure. That is why it is difficult to understand the Dhamma. So we need something to console our burning anxiety or desire or craving. Religion does not mean, or the duty of a religion is not to console that craving, to point out the uncertainty or the danger or the disappointment or unsatisfactoriness that we have to experience because of this craving. When pointed out, people say not interested. Because not agree with their craving. So the Dhamma means truth that which no one can destroy. And no, actually speaking, no religious labor. So Dhamma is not Buddhism. The Buddha did not introduce Buddhism. He introduced only Dhamma. And we have introduced Buddhism, and going on changing, still going on in time to come. You can see how many hundreds of different sects and schools and denominations come and tell you, oh, this is more powerful, this Buddhism is more powerful than your old Buddhism. This will continue forever, and you also follow. Forever you also follow them. Because you have not learned the Dhamma. When you realize the Dhamma, you never follow all these people. So my advice is, try to learn the Dhamma. And all these practices, what we perform, people can stop. Government can ban. Various countries, they have done. In communist countries, they have done this. Yes, they can destroy that so-called Buddhism. But the Dhamma taught by the Buddha, do you think there is any difficulty for people to practice the Dhamma in communist countries? In Russia or China or Indonesia, what they call this, Cambodia? There's no difficult for them to be kind, to be good, to be honest. That is Dhamma. Let it be any government, under any condition, we can practice the Dhamma. And we know how to face our problem. Through these practices, actually we have not learned how to face our problem, how to patch up our problem. Understand? And what you try to gain from religion, when you have worries, fears, suspicion, sicknesses, problems, then you come to religion. Thinking that you can gain something from your religion to get rid of this. Then you come and gain blessing, talisman, images, and chanting, holy water, holy string. Definitely you get some sort of relief. There is no doubt. You understand? And from other religions also, according to their prayers, they experience some sort of relief from their sicknesses and trouble. And if you can understand the Dhamma, you know how these things work. Where is the secret? In this Dhamma, you can find out how the mental energy, when you develop this through devotion, confidence and faith, and pay attention, how our mental energy and how others' mental energy focus towards you or to get rid of your problems, sicknesses. That is called blessing. In the end we say, God bless you. Let it be anything, don't go against this. You understand? If you believe in that way, you gain more confidence because you think God is more powerful. If you think in that way, there is no harm at all. Why do you want to talk against this? If you can get rid of your worries, reduce your tension and your sicknesses, you can maintain no harm, but that is not the remedy. Although you could manage to avoid or get rid of your problem temporarily, for the time being, again you have to face the same problem. That is not the final solution. If you can understand the Dhamma, then you know where the mistake.
Asala means name of another month. And the day, or the full moon day, the Buddha delivered the first sermon. That means 3 months after gaining his enlightenment. And why do we want to recite this discourse in the Pali language, which you cannot understand? So very easily we can read the English translation. You must understand the difference between the translation and the original text. It is historical that more than 2,500 years ago, the language used by the Buddha in India was known as Magadhi or Pali. The word Pali was not there at that time in India. There were 6 languages: Magadhi, Tauraseni, Apabhransa, Paisaj, and Sanskrit. And the word Sanskrit also used later. Formerly only Vedic. The word Pali for this language, which was known as Magadhi in India, started after recording the Pali Tripitaka and rearranging all the discourses according to the size, the length. They have collected all the short, very, very short sermons and separated and given one name for that book. That is called Anguttara Nikaya, Sutra Pitaka. Again, long, not very long one. They have collected some other discourses called middle length, Majjhima Nikaya, and separated. And again, very long sutras like Satipatthana Sutta, Mahaparinibbana Sutta. There are 30-40 pages and separated into another book called Digha Nikaya, the long sutras. And again, stanzas or gathas like Dhammapada. So still, we use the same language that they have recorded nearly 2000 years ago. So we believe that this is the language used by the Buddha. The words came out from the Buddha's mouth, and he wanted to tell others actually what he gained or realized, that we introduce as enlightenment. What is this enlightenment? I think you have heard there were only 5 disciples to listen to him at that time. The whole teaching that he delivered for 45 years, when we analyze, divided into various categories, into 84,000 items. 45 years teachings, when you collect, we can allocate into 84,000 items. But here, in this first sermon, Dhammacakka Sutra or Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutra, he has summarized and introduced the essence of the Dhamma and the nature of enlightenment. Because we believe that enlightenment means knowledge or intellect or realizations, if not very sharp or penetrative knowledge. But enlightenment is entirely a different thing. First, he gave this advice. So when you are going to practice this religion or Buddhism, you must understand not to go to any extremes. Now that is the first advice. There are 2 extremes, he said. Not to torture your physical body and your mind to practice Buddhism. Because this practice was very common in India at that time. Because they believe the more they torture their physical body, the more they suffer, they can wash away the sins, they can purify the mind and can gain the enlightenment or nirvana. So the Buddha has rejected this belief. And the second advice was not to indulge too much. What is this indulgence? People always argue. What is wrong actually? When we want to use our five senses to gain some sort of happiness, how can a religion says it is wrong? A religion never says it is wrong. Religion means Buddhism. Point out the problems, the difficulties, worries, fear, tension, unhappiness we develop after this indulgence. Take for instance, when you have some sort of itch, we want to scratch. When you scratch, we feel very nice feeling. But that is not the remedy for that itch. The situation of that a skin problem can be aggravated. And later this can become bigger or septic. Simply by scratching, we never get rid of this problem. So, indulgence means a scratching our five senses when there is itch. This is the nature of worldly enjoyment. People cannot understand this. They think through their enjoyment they can find the purpose or the satisfaction in their life, but they never gain it. Why? The whole world look like a battlefield today because of this indulgence, because of this itch and mental itch also. So by scratching or by attacking or by beating or by killing or by destroying, we won't gain the solution to cure this itchiness, aggravate the situation. That is the meaning of not to indulge too much. If you become slaves to your pleasure, then later you become very, very unhappy. And you never maintain contentment in your life. In the end, you depart from this world as unsatisfied living beings. That is the first advice. Then the second advice, the interpretation given by the Buddha, how he gained enlightenment. What is the nature of this enlightenment? He said, Chakkhung udapadi, jnanang udapadi, panya udapadi, vidya udapadi, aloko udapadi. I got 5 kinds of wisdom. Formerly that I never experienced in my life. Then item by he explained the nature of these 5 kinds of wisdom. So I have no time to explain. This is not the sermon, just only an introduction to this sutta. Then he explained what he realized. 4 noble truths. When you hear these 2 words, 4 noble truths, You can say, yes, we also know. We have read, we have learned, and we know. But did you realize, even one among those four, Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, Magga, these are the four. I can use a simple language without using book or textual words. First thing, why are we here in this world? Are we happy with this life? Then everybody says, everybody complain, everybody grumble. Very difficult to find out fully satisfied or contented single human beings on this earth. You say, coming to 5,000 millions human beings on this earth very soon. You can go and interview each and every person, whether you can find out a single human being who is fully satisfied with this life. Why always complain? Either physical or mental or worldly or internal or external problems, troubles, unhappiness. Realizations of this nature is the first truth. How many have realized this? You can say, we know Four Noble Truths, but did you realize? If you realize this, you never grumble for anything. Because you can understand why these problems arise. When you go and disturb an Arahant or a Buddha, they never grumble, they never criticize, they never condemn, because they realized this. What is the cause of it? Then the second one is, if we can understand that we are not happy with this life, then we must try to find out where the secret is. Who is responsible for this? It is due to our ignorance. We say God is responsible, devil is responsible, ghosts are responsible. This is called ignorance. When we realize the things properly, we never utter such words. Because we know all these problems, unhappiness or unsatisfactoriness arise from one particular point, cause. Then what is it? When the Buddha pointed out the real cause of all our problem as our own craving, then you see only that much. But you can go on analyzing one after the other, 1001 problems you are facing. In the end, you come back to your craving. That is the main cause. Realizations of this is the second noble truth. If you can realize this, then we know how to face our problem, how to reduce this craving, how to maintain contentment, how to maintain peace in our mind. This is the advantage of this realization. Then the third one. By realizing these truths, what do we gain? For what purpose that we try to realize? Third truth explained. After this realization, we do not generate any more craving or crazy attitude for our life or the world or property or this or that. Then automatically all the other problems also fade away, disappear. That is the only time that we can experience real happiness, real peace, calmness, satisfaction in our life. For that we use one word, nirvana. But again, by using our ignorance and craving, we have framed up, we have illustrated nirvana according to our taste. That means to satisfy the same craving, we have illustrated nirvana in such a way to create temptation. Just like paradise or heaven or pure land or Sukhavati, just to create temptation in the man's mind. Still we have ignorance. That is why we illustrate and introduce this in this way. Then the last one, the method. We realize, we admit we are not happy. And we realize what is the cause of this problem. We know it is our own craving. And we know that we can really experience peace and happiness and satisfaction in our life. Then what is the method? This is the most misunderstood concept or the belief amongst various religious groups. Usually people believe the method is pray and worship and recite something or believe in God. This is the method. Otherwise, no salvation for you. This belief was very, very old belief which was rejected by the Buddha. Then he said, this is the method. He said, I have practiced, I have studied all these methods earlier, but I could not gain a real enlightenment through those practices. Then he introduced eightfold noble path. There are 8 items, but only one path. There are no 8 paths. I heard on many occasions some other speakers, they give talk, they say there are 84,000 paths to nirvana. This is the nature of their understanding. You take only one path, that is enough. Alright, let us take one among those 84,000. Not to tell life, one path. Not to destroy others' lives, one path. Not to have sexual misconduct, another path. So by practicing only that particular path, can they attain nirvana? And this is the way how they mislead innocent people. 84,000 items. Since we cannot cultivate, practice all these at once within one lifetime, we develop life after life. That is why it has taken such a long period for Buddha to gain his enlightenment. Again, people try to introduce this. Oh, don't worry, not necessary for you to have repeated birth and death again and again. Within this lifetime you can gain enlightenment, you can attain if you practice this brand of Buddhism. But they cannot introduce anybody who gained this. Where this person exists within this lifetime? Who gained this enlightenment within this lifetime? Always they mislead innocent people. So these 8 methods are known as noble. So why did he introduce this as Arya? Arya, the word used by the Buddha, Aryo Attangiko Maggo, 8-fold noble path. Arya means noble. Those who practice this method naturally become noble people. Another meaning, this path is noble, respectable, harmless, without hurting, disturbing, accusing any living beings in this world. When people practice this method, that is called noble path, then people also automatically become noble people. And this 8-fold noble path we introduce as Samma Ditthi, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. I think you have heard more than 1,000 times our interpretation. This is the creams or the essence of the Buddha's teaching that he has summarized in this Dhammacakka Pavattana Sutra. So we are going to recite these sutras. And the monks who recite this, they radiate their kindness and compassion towards you, for your peace and happiness, to maintain good health. And when you listen to this chanting with devotion and confidence, although at once you cannot understand, your devotion, your understanding contribute a lot for you to get rid of so many problems. When you listen to certain music, you like the rhythm, you like the wordings, you entertain your human emotion. You say, very nice song. But how long can you listen to this song or music? Maybe few months. After that you throw away this. But this chanting, although never entertain human emotion, although you cannot understand, at that time you develop your devotion and confidence. Therefore you never get fed up with this chanting. And the monks never get fed up with this chanting. Monks who chant also like to listen to chanting. Because this is not to entertain emotion. At that time we develop devotion. This devotion calms the mind. Then the physical body. But after listening to music, you arouse your passions, your emotions, and so many things, create excitement, and you also dance according to the tune. There's a vast difference between chanting and singing songs or music. So, we are going to recite the sutras to bless you all.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato sambuddhassa. Evam me sutang ekang samayang bhagava paranasiyang viharati sipatane tatra ko bhagava pancavaggiye bhikkhu amantesi Deme bhikkave anta pabbajitena nasevitabba yochayang kamesu kamasu kallikanu yogo gammo potu janiko anariyo anatta sannito Yochayang atta kilamatanu yogo dukkho anariyo anatta ete te bhikkave ubbhante anupagamma majjhima patipada tathagatena Chakku karani jnana karani upasamaya abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya katamāca sābhikkave majjhimā patipadā tathāgatena Chakku karani jnana karani upasamaya abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya Ayameva ariyo attangiko maggo seyati dhamma samma sankappo samma vaca samma kammanto samma vāyāmo samma sati samma Ayanko sabhikkave majjhimā patipada tathāgatena Chakku karani jnana karani upasamaya abhiññāya sambodhāya nibbānāya Idang ko vana bhikkave dukkhang ariya saccang jātipi dukkha jarapi dukkha vyādipi dukkha